Shalom and welcome to another one of our 125th anniversary videos as we reminisce about our community, look back on some fond memories. And I'm with a special friend, Terry Pickett, who we've known for so many years. And Terry, thank you for joining me today.
Thank
it's good having you.
Thank you.
How did your family come to this community?
Well, it depends which side.
Okay.
On my mother's side, it was her great uncle, or my great uncle, her mother's brother, Samuel Friedman, who came, I don't know exactly when, but he was sort of like the Mr. Samuels of his day. And then his son, Mose, I think was, this is where I get very confused. Yeah, so at any rate, I think that was my grandmother's brother, and then her nephew, Mose, yeah.
So how many years ago was that?
Oh, gee, because my mom, okay, they were born in the 1911, my Aunt Margie probably. So they probably came around near the beginning of the 20th century. And so my bubby and my grandfather, her husband, who they all came over from Russia, Lithuania.
What brought them here?
I don't really know. They came through Ellis Island, but then they came to Louisville. And so we actually have family, or we did have family in Louisville. And then probably because Bubby's brother was here, that's why Bubby and Zadie came. And so that their name was Feinstein, or Feinstein. And anyway, and so then my mother and her two sisters were born here. And one thing I did not know until just a few years ago, that their first language was Yiddish.
Wow.
You know, so they grew up here. So anyway, so that's that part of the family. My father hitchhiked here from from New York. He's actually from Toronto, but he was working in New York, and then he was holding down two jobs, going to law school, and then the Depression came, and his boss took a raise and didn't give his employees a raise, so he said to hell with that, and so he decided to hitchhike to Charleston. Now this is really, it turns out that one of his best friends, Nat Sandler, was pen pals with Mildred Prizer. I don't know if she was a Prizer then, and so Dad somehow got a ride with a guy who worked for Ben Prizer.
Wow.
Who got him to Charleston. And Dad, so Ben Prizer was one of the first people my father met. And so we're talking 1934. And Dad came here with $2 in his pocket. So he figured he better get a job. And he did, he got a job. And then he met my mother at a dance within a couple of weeks, I think. And for him, it was love at first sight. And he told my mother that the lore is that he was going to marry her, and she said, "You're crazy." Because my mother, she was really beautiful, and she had two other serious suitors. One of whom was older than she, I think it was Julius Poland, but had a lot of money. Another was an up-and-comer, Jack Richmond. And then my mother somehow chose my father, this ne'er-do-well from Toronto. So,
who hitchhiked
here. And just as an aside, when Ben Prizer had the heart attack before he died, he actually had the heart attack in my father's arms on the golf course.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that was.
So that's how your family kind of started here.
So that's how my family, started here, and then my mother was an integral part of, well, her two sisters were, but they moved away, Margaret and Ruth, so Margaret Klein and Ruth Stark, and but Mom and Dad stayed here, and so we're an integral part of the.
Well, that kind of leads me to, what are your memories, and what did you think growing up here at B'nai Jacob in this community?
Okay, well, B'nai Jacob itself, the physical entity, the physical edifice always meant a lot to me. The minute you walked in the door, I felt as if I were entering a religious place. It was just beautiful. And sometimes as a kid, I would go into the sanctuary when nobody was there and just sit there and just the peacefulness, the beauty of it, the lights coming through the window. It was just beautiful.
Can I answer a question? Because I know most people use the main entrance, Was the Elizabeth Street entrance ever used in Great?
Oh yeah.
So was that kind of your first memories? Was it going through the Elizabeth entry, or did you still go through the front doors on Virginia Street?
Right. I mean, you know, so anyway, so that's one of the first things, and that really connected me to, like, I think it's a feng shui synagogue. It just feels so right. And we were so fortunate to have Rabbi Cooper there, because he oversaw just almost every detail of development. Stephanie knows more about the architect. Apparently was a world-class architect who designed the name Jacob. Okay, so that's one of my memories. The other was, of course, the lobby in Sunday school and coming in, and it was filled with kids. I mean, just kids. And then Rabbi Cooper periodically, I don't know if he actually pinched our cheeks, but he would always say something to the pretty little girls, and he would always talk to the pretty little girls and stuff like that. So my memory here was that the synagogue was run by 4 men, and Rabbi Cooper, of course, Cantor Reese, Mr. Samuels, and Leon Hardman. Leon, Leon, I mean, he was a custodian, but he was so much more than that. First of all, he was incredibly handsome. And then the other thing, he just really took us on. Like, so I think it was during Yom Kippur, there were a bunch of us sitting up in the balcony, and we sneaked out and we went to the Valley Bell, which I'm sure you've heard of, to get something to eat. Well, Leon came after us and made us all come back to the synagogue, and he did stuff like that. He was just amazing. And this is interesting, because I hadn't even thought of this. In the 50s and 60s, he gave driving lessons to a lot of us, so that for a black man and a white girl, I mean, to some, I was just telling that to somebody, and they were saying, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And Leon, he was great. And when he gave me my lessons, he said, "Terry, you can park. You can't drive, but you can park." So I was going to parallel parking. I couldn't drive, and so just he just the 4 of them. They were. It was just such, to me, they all ran the synagogue, and then of course went to Hebrew school with Mr. Samuels and Cantor Reese. And then I loved, of course, the assemblies, the song. I remember we learned how to sing Hine Matov 3 different ways. And there was a newsletter that we had in Sunday school. It was called The Israelite. And there was a gossip column in The Israelite, which was the first thing we went to. And the gossip column was called Big News for Little Jews.
Big News for Little Jews.
Yeah, and you heard that. And Phil Goldstein, I think, was the person who came up with the name. And so it was
Remember any gossip?
Oh, it's just, well, does HK looking at LC, and this is Harvey Kersey looking at Lori Kaplan. I also remember all my Sunday school teachers. Now, first of all, I was a kindergarten dropout. First of all, I hated being in school, period. It wasn't until high school that I started liking school. But I'm going to say the names because it might bring back people's memories. First grade was, Steve, not Becky Bernstein. Becky Bernstein. Second grade, Jeanette Canner. Third grade, Normie Reese. Fourth grade, Paul Friedberg. Fifth grade, Harry Canner. Sixth grade, Mindy Karp. And it was always so fun because he'd look at maps and he'd have his third finger out, pointing out the maps, and we would all titter. Fourth grade, it was Lou Goldberg. Seventh grade, Lou Goldberg. Eighth grade, Esther Gordon. And then ninth grade, the wonderful Sidney Neerman. And I'm sure people, Sidney Neerman, I mean, he was just an extraordinary teacher. And I remember once the rabbi came into class, and we're talking about the Torah, the Bible, and somebody asked Rabbi Cooper if you could take it literally about the earth being made in 7 days, and Rabbi Cooper said no. And so it was a shocker to some of us that the rabbi didn't take it literally. And so Sidney Neerman would just open, he just opened up worlds to us and opened up our minds. And then the other thing is, I don't know that everybody did, but I really liked Rabbi Cooper's sermons. They could be very long, very whatever, but they were always interesting. And on Friday nights at the Urecki Shabbat, and I'm sure some people have told you about this, about the Rabbi and Simon Meyer having this repartee. And even as a kid, I sort of enjoyed that. And there was always kichel and tea, and at the Urecki Shabbat, so they were real fancy. And so
you have great memories. you left for a spell, and you came back. What brought you back?
Well, several spells.
Okay.
Okay. You know, I never really wanted to come back to Charleston, but I'd come back, of course, to visit and stuff like that. And but then, what happened is when I was 28, 29, I got pregnant, and I came in. The biological father did not want to marry, and I did not want well, I was originally going to give this child up for adoption. I did not want an abortion. I really didn't. I could have, but I just didn't want one. But then about my 6th month of pregnancy, I decided to keep the child. And so then there was all about what was I going to do, blah, blah, blah. But I ended up coming back to Charleston with Rachel. And again, Rabbi Cooper did an extraordinary thing, because there was nothing, it might not have been very smart, but there was nothing against halacha in the situation. So he said for the auxiliary rite, congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Harry Winston on the birth of their granddaughter, Rachel Bailey Winston. It was out front. People could talk about it. It was, and Rachel racked up. I mean, you know, people just really, they were wonderful. The only, I mean, and not that she wasn't wonderful, the person who said something funny when they brought over Rachel's present was Ruby Newman, and she said to me, "Naughty girl," and then it was said, and I didn't take it wrong. And anyway, this was
wonderful what Rabbi Cooper did. That really, it made it easier for you and
my parents,
for the community, and of course for your parents.
Oh yeah. I mean, was not okay. We're talking back in 1977, and this was not a usual thing back then.
Now then, eventually you went away, and then you came back.
Well, no, then I got then met George Pickett.
Okay.
And we got married, and he converted. I did not ask him to convert, but he went through an Orthodox conversion down in Birmingham, Alabama, and he decided on his own that he would do, which I'm so glad he did, because that meant Rabbi Cooper could marry us. And we weren't his very last wedding, but we were one of his last weddings. Oh, and I think I told you before, but I'll just, as an aside, my sister Dinah, and she married Fred Lovitch, that Dinah and Fred were the first couple that Rabbi Cooper had married both sets of parents. And Dinah and Fred got married in 1963. Yeah. So then when George and we got married on July 12th, 1981, and it was a fabulous way. It was lovely. It was in the chapel. And then that was the weekend that Rabbi Landau signed the contract to become the next rabbi. You know, so there's a fabulous photograph, which I forget if I've shown it to you, but I'll have to show it to you. It was with Rabbi Cooper, Mr. Samuels, and Rabbi Landau, and they're praying over something at our reception. And then Rachel Rubin, oh my God, she was catered it, and people didn't talk about the wedding, but they talked about the reception for months. So then George and then George adopted Rachel. So you know, Rachel Bailey Winston Pickett, and so we moved down we were in Birmingham, Alabama, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Long Beach, New York. Long Beach, New York had the only congregation I've ever been to that matches the warmth of B'nai Jacob. It was an Orthodox congregation, but it was a block away, so we went there. And it was very warm, and because most congregations I've been to, they just don't have the warmth of B'nai Jacob. And then we went to Wales for 2 years, and but when George realized he would have stayed there forever. For me, it was too far from family, so he put out job feelers, and the places he knew the most people were here. He'd been state health director in Rockefeller's first administration, and then he worked in New York, and then there was something called WVMI, and they said, "You got to get back here. We need you." And so he did, and we came back to.
What year was that?
1997.
And you've been here ever since?
Yeah, and so we came back November. I think it was November 16th, 1997. And it was interesting because we went to a dinner here, and it was like prodigal daughter returning, you know, and so came back here. But so, and by that, well, I had met you before then, of course, you know, but I remember because Dinah and Stephanie and I talked to you before our mother's funeral, and had seen you, but didn't really know you. And but then coming back was really hard. I mean, loved Wales, and by then Rachel was in college, so and then George had 2 sons who were living in different places too, and but I think as an adult, I'm sorry, I'm not as observant as one might like to be, but
this is not confessional. It's okay.
However, class for me, class.
You come to every one of our classes.
I love class. I have learned more about Judaism since coming here and coming to class than I ever knew growing up. So
it's in this room, in this library, that we learned so much. We could talk forever, and I'd love to hear more, but I've got to kind of wind it down.
Yes.
What does this community, what does B'nai Jacob mean to you today?
That's hard. Excuse me. I feel very connected to the community, but I don't have family, and I'm here, and I really feel not having family. But the synagogue itself is still such a core. And well, the other thing is after George died, I was wrecked. And you, the synagogue, being able to say Kaddish every day, you know, that held me together. So it means a lot.
Well, you mean a lot to us, and thank you for spending and sharing a lot of these memories, some of which were beautiful, but also I'm sure very difficult. And it really helps flesh out some of the most beautiful memories of B'nai Jacob and why it means so much to you and why it means so much to me and so many others.
People.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Terry, for joining us. Thank you for watching. We hope you'll join us for our 125th anniversary, which is coming up September 27th through the 29th. On behalf of Terry and myself, thank you for watching and have a great day.